So when we do these interviews, we always like to start with, what's your name? What are you known for? What do you do in comics?
Oh, no. Well, my name is Ricky Sprague, and I am the person who colors the current iteration of Doris Danger.
Your claim to fame, even though it's not released yet.
Well, it is online, so there's that.
You're right.
Right. So that's probably what I'm best known for. I did just post a new Short Boom comic collection. That's what I call my occasional comics releases, which you can pick up on Amazon. I mean, before that, I think my biggest credits were probably Mad Magazine. It's several articles in there a long time ago, and I was in Cracked magazine a lot. But that's been a while. So
regular contributor.
I would say that, yeah, for Cracked magazine, I probably would have been considered a regular contributor. Their standards were lower than Mad. So I got somebody wrote a history of Cracked magazine and got in touch with me about, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something, and through MySpace actually. And I wrote this like really snarky, smart ass, like 4-page email about my time at Cracked, and he published the whole thing in the book. And I was just thinking he was gonna like take the information. And it was so smart ass. And I got the book like a year ago. I finally got the book, and I was shocked. It was like everything I'd written was in this book. And I just wasn't expecting it. I felt simultaneously proud and a little bit ashamed at the same time, because I kind of came off as a smart ass in that, but I am kind of a smart ass IRL. So what can you do?
Right on. You also, when we met, you were doing a lot of animation. You were.
Oh, yeah. I've had some. I on my own and with another friend. I don't know if he'd want me to name him now, but we did a movie together called Sperm, the Motion Picture, which actually got into a lot of film festivals. It's like a 10-minute animated, kind of a fairly dirty animated movie. I was going through a period where one of my animated movies was actually accepted into the Spike and Mike Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation. So I mean that's the kind of stuff I was doing then. I was doing kind of naughty stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I was doing, naughty kind of. There was a period of like 4 or 5 years where I was doing kind of naughty animated movies, and I got accepted into a bunch of film festivals all over the world. I mean, that's kind of as far as it went, but yeah. So I mean, I guess I am an internationally obscure animator and filmmaker, as well as an obscure cartoonist and writer.
And historically important regular contributor to Cracked magazine.
Right, exactly. And also Mad, both of those magazines no longer exist. So I've managed to outlive two of. I mean, it was a huge deal for me emotionally and spiritually to get into Mad, especially. I mean, I didn't have any emotional connection to Cracked, but I have a lot of affection for it. Now, I really like the editor there was Andy Simmons, and he had worked at National Lampoon. And when I was a little kid, my dad he was a casual National Lampoon reader. So I had been reading National Lampoon like almost as soon as I was able to read as a kid. You know, it was one of the I started on National Lampoon before Mad even. So you know, being associated even tangentially with National Lampoon with somebody who was an editor, you know, in the 80s. That was really exciting for me. And Cracked treated me really well. I mean, I'd send them stuff, and sometimes 2 months later, it would be in the magazine. I mean, just the turnaround was quick. And they wouldn't tell me the contract that I signed with them. It just covered all my submissions. Like they sent me one contract right at the start, you know. And with Mad, it was always, it was much more professional, I guess you might say. But there was a separate contract for each item, and you know, they wouldn't order, you know, they wouldn't send you a contract until they were absolutely sure that they were going to go with it. So yeah, but I started reading Mad when I was a kid, you know, like 4th or 5th grade, and we had like the Mad board game and the Mad card game, and you know, all of those, you remember they used to have all those mass market paperbacks, especially like the Don Martin Steps Out, you know, all of those things. I mean, and my favorite book of all time, probably until high school, was Mad Clobbers the Classics by Larry Siegel, and Angelo Torres did the illustrations, but it was parodies of classic novels. And it was mostly, you know, one page would be prose, and then on the opposite page was an Angelo Torres illustration. And I read that book until it was almost in liquid form. I read it so often throughout, you know, elementary school and then middle school and in high school. I just, that book was just the best for me. So getting into Mad Magazine, it was a big deal when it finally happened. I only ended up, I think I sold like maybe 10 articles to them total. But yeah, that was really important to me. I was sorry to see Mad cease publication.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if they hadn't ceased publication last year, they'd be ceasing publication now. So it was gonna happen. It might as well have happened when there were people could note it and mourn it. You know, if it happened now, everybody'd be like, I'm too busy with other things, you know. Mm-hmm. Who cares?
Yeah.
I got to get my toilet paper. So
so I think we met right about that time when you were either still doing these entries to Mad and Cracked, or possibly shortly after. And I know for sure you were doing the cartoons, because I came to one or two of your screenings. I remember seeing Sperm.
Oh, right.
Do you remember how and when we met?
I don't. It would have had to, I mean, I know we met through our mutual friend Dan.
Yeah. And coincidentally, Dan was my first cameraman for this documentary.
Right.
my biggest sideman helper for about the first 5 or 8 years or something. He filmed the bulk of all of our material. And my memory was that you guys were working together in a temp agency, and you were down in LA, and I had just recently started self-publishing my own comics and was popping out to conventions. And I went down to a show in LA, and Dan kind of hooked us up, said, "Oh, my friend Chris is there. You should go check him out." Oh. I think that's the first time we met, and I can't remember if you bought my work for the first time there, or if you had checked it out since you knew of me through Dan before then. but I do remember pretty quickly you were very kind about my work and, supportive and, I like what you're doing and here's what I'm doing, and so then I had an opportunity to see some of the stuff you were doing.
Right. Well, you were doing, I remember Dr. DeBunco really clearly. And, I had been a reader and subscriber to Skeptical Inquirer for a long time. I mean, I still have a lot of, you remember when it was still a quarterly and it was like digest size,
Yeah.
I've got like a box of those somewhere back there.
I think I see it. I see
it. Right. So, that definitely made an impression on me. I figured that the two of us were connected, at least in that way. You don't see a lot of skepticism based comics stories. So I was impressed. Actually, as I think about it, I still have your Dr. DeBunco shirt. That's upstairs.
You didn't wear it for interview?
I don't. Do you still make them? Do you still have them? Okay. See, it's a collector's item now. I think I need to get it framed and hang it on the wall now.
From there, I started thinking it might be fun to do some of my Doris Danger comics as cartoons. And I reached out to you again for that. And you were totally up for jumping in with me on that. And I still have those snippets. And I've spoken with Fantagraphics, and it looks like we're going to plan to use those for some publicity when we're getting ready to release the book. So I have you to thank for those.
Oh, you're talking about the animation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
That was that. I feel like that was the last animation that I have done.
Shudder, now that's amore.
I don't think I've done anything since then. That was a lot of fun. The conceit of that was that it was sort of a parody of those horrible Marvel Superstars animated shows in the 60s, where they just took actual panels from like Kirby and Gene Colan and Steve Ditko and just very crudely animated them.
You could almost cut the images out from the comics,
They must have traced them onto cells, but it was like they did it like directly. And you could tell, like, and in the same scene, it would be like, it was obviously like Jack Kirby, and then it would cut to Don Heck, and you could tell it was that they had just taken from these panels, and it looked terrible. So I took your original, I just took your drawings from the comics and just animated them. I think what we did looks even better than what they did.
It's even better. So much worse.
Right.
Better.
Ugh, squeezing the life out of me. If he weren't so dainty with his pinky, I'd be done for.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So good. I'm glad that is that's coming out. I remember that. I think that unfortunately we used that music that I don't think we're going to be able to get the rights to that music from Santa Sangre, but
we've got plans to do something about that, and so we'll be making some alterations and stuff. But your animations will be in there, and talking about whenever I'm working with you, I feel like we have such a great time just brainstorming how we're going to handle the project, right? Because that animation, we talked about how in those Marvel cartoons, it would just be like a shot of the face, and you could tell it's just a still shot, and then like the mouth would move a little.
I beg your pardon. I must go now to reveal I'm a robot.
See the pose that Kirby drew, and like they wouldn't even necessarily animate it. It would just float across the screen with the legs and arms in the same position as it floats.
Yeah.
You said, oh yeah, we got to do this, or it's a body like this, and then you'd see the hand kind of going like.
Right. Yeah. And you could see the color was so bad, you know, like the color, it was a totally different color on the arm that was moving, you know. And they would take like walking, sometimes like Ditko would do this sometimes, where he'd do panels where it was somebody like walking away, right? And there'd be like 3 or 4 panels with, you know, the different walking poses, and they just take that, and you know, and that was all, and that was walking.
Yeah, they show the one, then they show the next, and then they show
right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's amazing to me that was on television, you know, like how, and it's my understanding that that's one reason why Kirby left Marvel, because I mean, he was rightly annoyed that they were lifting his work for this animation, you know, and none of the artists were getting any compensation for it, you know. I mean, he was essentially working as an animator at that point. But he wasn't getting that sweet animation swag, so for scratch. So yeah, that show, it's really shocking to me that it exists, and I think that what we did with what became that trailer that we put together, I think is, you know, is pretty funny.